Okay, so blending is done. Now that took a really long time. Now I sped it up, so when you're thinking about speeding when you look at speed paints, you think, oh, they're doing it so quickly, but they're really not. I mean that entire process of just blending, according to the recording that I'm doing, took about 45 minutes just to do that. So this is definitely not a speedy process. Sometimes I get annoyed with it because this process does take too long. But it is a really good process, and you get really cool effects at the end. So, as you can see, the line art layer I don't need to have on anymore for you to tell what's going on in this drawing, which is the goal by the end of the blending phase. You should be able to tell what the image is, because you see with the flat colors and the basic shade, you really can't tell what it is. It's the shading, it's this type of shading that gets it into being able to see. Now, I have noticed that when I do these sorts of blending processes, I always for some reason somehow manage to forget a spot, just like right here and whatnot. But it's fine. The whole point is the part that you notice first is the part that is well done. It's this extra stuff that you really don't notice, and that shows the detail is in the correct spot. The most detail is in the head, so your eyes focus on where the head is. Also, there's this cloud layer that I removed because I needed this cloud layer not to be visible, because I needed a color pick down here. Okay. So after this blending phase, I'm going to do the final really phase that I do, and that is polishing up the lines and line work. So as you see, when you zoom in, you'll notice that the edges of all of my lines are super soft. They don't really make any sense. That's because I've been using such a soft brush this entire time to blend in these types of colors, and so it just leaves this sort of hazy feel that's going on, which I don't like. So what I do is I'm gonna take my ink brush, which if you don't know what brush pack I'm using, I'll have the link. I'm using two different brush packs. One is a simple concept art brush pack, and the other pack that I'm using is a pack by Draw with Jazza. I don't know if you've heard of that channel, but I'll leave a link to his channel and his brush pack down in the description. But there are that brush pack, the one that has this ink brush that I'm going to be using, does cost money, but there are several replacements that you can use if you don't want to spend money. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the color that's near the edge, and so this brush leaves a really sharp edge. It leaves the most crisp edge of any brush that I have, so that's why I use it, because I'm just going to take this line, and I'm just going to highlight across. I would do this on a separate layer. I'm being dumb and not doing it on a separate layer, but you will just trace the lines basically, and then you can erase on a layer underneath if it overlaps or anything. Let's see. So as you can see, after I've done that, notice how the line is now super sharp. Now this is a subtle difference, but once you do it across the whole drawing, all of a sudden the drawing becomes super crisp and in super high detail. So this is probably my least favorite part of this part of the job, because it's boring. It doesn't really make it look much different after the edge. At the end of it, it doesn't really look that much different. It's simply cleaning up the mess that you made underneath. So I'm going to do this on all the lines, but be careful what color that you pick. So for example, I was going to have a purple haze glow. So this is where I'm going to talk about secondary lighting. So secondary lighting, my secondary light source is this arrow, right? Is this source right here. So there's some sort of like bubbling, boiling liquid that's causing purple smoke. So it's a light source. So light is going to undercast and undercast this. So secondary light sources, I like to indicate that they're secondary light sources by making them a fancy color. So since this one is purple, we're going to have a nice deep purple. So this is a really, really deep purple. I'm going to create a new layer on top of everything, and I'm going to set it to linear dodge / add. Now, linear dodge / add is an interesting what do you call it? Layer adjustment thing, where what happens is when you draw, no matter what you draw on top of it, it will continually get brighter, especially if you have a soft brush. You'll notice that you can create little color pieces right here. So as you can see, no matter what, it makes everything on top of it lighter. So basically, I'm taking my ink brush, and I'm taking... See, notice how dark my color is. Like, my color is really dark, but it's not showing up as that dark. It's showing up quite light, and when I add more color, it turns even lighter. So, case in point, I'm going to set a layer linear dodge. I'm going to lower its opacity down to about 50%, and I'm going to take my ink brush, and I'm going to indicate where the bright underglow is. So the underglow is coming from beneath, obviously, so the line work underneath is what's going to be affected by this. So I should probably be being more clean with my lines. So I'm going to redo this. Okay. Now. Jesus. Okay, now we can indicate the layer underneath. You can indicate the glow underneath. So this needs to be pretty gosh darn bright. So I'm gonna adjust those colors. I don't know what I'm saying. The point is the colors aren't working out the way... There we go. See how it's bright. Bright and glowy. Which is what the linear dodge tool does. Which is why I like it so much, because it makes everything super glowy. Now when you're using this tool, don't just use the outlines. We're coloring in 3D shapes here, so you can add in extra lines to indicate extra color, because that part of the leg is facing underneath, so it's going to not just hit on the edge, but it's going to hit on the side of that as well. Same with stuff like this, so it's going to hit all inside there, not just on the edge of the line, but on the outside. So you can make quite a pretty thick line with what I'm doing here. So as you can see, that's pretty thick, and you can already begin to see how there's some sort of light source coming from beneath. You just can't really tell what it is, you just know that it's there. And that makes your coloring more dynamic, and it makes the piece more interesting, because it's all about how interesting is your piece. I'm gonna... there we go. So what I did there is I took the original layer of the lighten layer and I copied it, and since they're both on linear dodge, they're going to show up more. So there we go. And linear dodge. Okay. There we go. So as you can see, the nice secondary light source is sort of there, but not really there. It's the subtle touch that makes it look that much cooler. So you can go ham on this. And I'm gonna cut to the final part of this after I've smoothed everything, after I put in the final light source, and I'm gonna talk about some final adjustments that I do when I'm drawing to make it just that much cooler looking at the very end. So I will see you guys in a bit after another and final time lapse. Okay, so all of the, for the most part, corrections have been done. I didn't want to spend too long on this drawing because after all, this is a tutorial. So this is as far as I'm gonna go. So the last thing that we gotta do is just some simple color fixer-uppers. So what you can do is you can do a color, or a new layer, and set the layer mixer or whatever to color, and then you go to the paint bucket tool and you paint black. So you just painted all black, and when you paint all black, it automatically turns the thing into black and white. So you can see where things are messed up. So if something like all of a sudden goes and just disappears when you do it into black, that means your values aren't very good. So it's pretty 3D for the most part, but I'm just going to add a few layer adjustments. So I'm going to put this on color as well. And I'm going to pick, no, not that, brush, alt. Okay, so you're going to pick a color, pick a purpley color, and we're going to go back to the big round brush, and we're just going to purplize the bottom here because that's where the light is coming from. So light is going to influence the color. So we want that color to be more pink down at the bottom. So it's sort of like a gradient to the new layer. So obviously we're not going to leave it this vivid, obviously. So we're just going to, there. And then we're going to want to brighten up this side. So we're going to take this color, this purpley color, we're going to make it brighter. We're going to make it brighter, and we're going to make it more closer to yellow. So we're going to make that more blue, and we're going to color just this side of the wall, this side of him as well. So as you can see, that's a little bit much, so we just lower the opacity down. And as you can see, we get a real nice swallowing effect where now the character appears to be in the environment and not just sitting there on top of the environment, which is the number one thing you don't want to do. So the last thing that we're going to put is we're going to put another mix, and we're going to put it on linear dodge, I guess. And then I'm just going to pick the bluish color, lightish bluish color, and we're going to brighten up this side of his body. So obviously a little bit more control here, so, and there we go. So that side's a little bit brightened up, and then we're going to take the other side and we're going to set this one to multiply, and we're going to set that as a more purpley color because, like I said, as things get darker, they get cooler. So we're making this side darker because this is the dark side, because we talked about the light source. It's coming from that direction. You can't even see that arrow. It's coming from that direction, so you need to make sure that the dark is on this side. So I'm going to take a multiply layer with a purple, and we're going to make this side darker as well. So these are just quick little color adjustment fixes that you can do at the very end that really sink your character in. They just really help with the overall feel of that. So the other thing is you don't want these colors going off of your character. So what you want to do is you want to highlight everything that isn't your character. So there, everything that isn't my character has been highlighted, and then you can go and you can press delete on these layers, and it'll delete everything that isn't on the character. So now you notice that the dark is only on our character. So let's lower the opacity on that a little bit. So as you can see, these three adjustment layers are quite amazing, really, because it goes from this to this, which really makes it look like it's part of the environment, which is the main goal with color adjustments anyway. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to do overall color adjustments. So I'm going to go over to my adjustments tab, and we're going to do a levels. So we're going to do another levels tab, and if you notice right here where it says RGB, you can change that to red, green, and blue. So you can adjust individual things. So normally what I end up doing is, since my overall main color was purple, there's way too much purple, and I'd rather have it be green. So I'm going to add more green. So let's go over to the green. So yeah, just a little bit of green. This is mostly experimental process, really, so you can just fiddle around with these. So yeah, this is mostly an experimental process where I'm just fiddling around with the colors and seeing what looks nice and what doesn't, because sometimes you may do this and you'll just scrap it, but I like doing a quick adjustments. Let's see. Okay. So we'll keep that in there. We can do another adjustment, which is the curves adjustment, and that contrast thing. So if you do one hit right there and one hit right there, you can make your darks super dark, and you can make your lights super dark, super light. So as you can see, you can get some weird stuff going on here, but we don't want that. We just want a subtle change. So adjustments, curves, and you can click just a little bit up on the brights and a little bit down on the darks. Beautiful. I think that's gonna be it for this tutorial. I don't think there's any more I have to add. There are more things I'd like to talk about more in depth. So if you want a specific more in-depth part of the tutorial, or if you want a different part, or if you want a completely new thing to be covered, then be my guest and write it down in the comments, and I will see if I can do a video of that. I will try my best to do all this stuff. I removed the bottle. From, see, he's holding a little bottle here. If I can get my original line art layer. As you can see, he was holding a like potion thing. I'm thinking I'm gonna add that in as a separate tutorial and talk about how glass works. So let me know if that's something you're interested in. But anyway, that's it for this tutorial. I hope you all learned something, and that's it. Bye.